why an author's politics matter. This is a topic where I wish I was one of those YouTubers who had a microphone. This is a can of my hairspray. You know, we make do. But today we're going to be talking about why an author's politics is important to your reading, to your books, whatever. I've been seeing a lot of discourse about this. It's on TikTok. I'm sorry, it's on TikTok. I apologize, YouTube. I apologize. But I do feel like TikTok is a very unique platform that has accelerated the reduction in critical thinking. I thought that would be Twitter, but on Twitter at least you had to read. You still technically do have to, but you should never go on Twitter anymore. It is a cesspool. But at least there you had to read. On TikTok, you don't. Most people don't even watch full videos, and even if they do, it's on 2x speed. It is something I have been trying to unlearn. But let's talk about why an author's politics are important. This is going to be a little bit more blasé of an episode, so grab a cup of tea, grab your hairspray, and let's talk about it. I also don't feel the Mr. Men mug is appropriate either, but we move. Separate the art from the artist. This is the number one thing that is thrown at you when you talk about a author or anyone, you know, an artist's work, and you say, hey, this guy is a piece of shit. Or gal, whoever, anyone, they're a piece of shit. And it doesn't work. Unfortunately, it doesn't work because they are still extracting value out of you. They are still monetarily benefiting from you consuming their work. No matter how hard you try to separate yourself from them, they still do. For example, I believe it was 2023 where this happened, but I'm not, or maybe, oh god, it's 2026 right now. Maybe it was 2024. Harry Potter video game came out. It was mid. It was mid at best, apparently. And people were like, hey, don't buy this game. It benefits J.K. Rowling. Jump scare. I'm sorry. This game benefits J.K. Rowling. And people were like, no, it doesn't, guys. What do you mean? It's just a game. She didn't write the game. But, you know, she makes a cut. She makes money off of the game. The game in itself was mid as well. And yet, she made money off of it. And then it came out, I don't know what year it was, last year the news came out that J.K. Rowling used her exorbitant amount of wealth. I believe she's a billionaire at this point. She used her wealth to fund anti-trans groups in the UK. And look, if you know, are anti-trans yourself, J.K. Rowling still should not be able to use her wealth to be able to influence UK public policy as well as the lives of individuals in the UK. People who have been continuously demonized in the UK and who 2023 at the very least we saw a young trans girl be murdered by her peers because of the very ideology that the likes of J.K. Rowling sprouts. You know, you cannot separate an artist from their art. You purchasing anything to do with the Harry Potter books goes towards J.K. Rowling being able to help influence decisions in the UK government. If we are against lobbying, we are against all lobbying. It's particularly lobbying that requires financial funding from billionaires. We should all be against that. Yet there are people who keep saying separate the art from the artist. Unfortunately, you cannot ever do that. Even when it comes to death of the author, even that is something that you can't really separate either, because in some circumstances the author's death does not mean their influence is gone. The author's death does not mean that groups associated with that author do not continue to receive money and funds. For example, if we're talking about Yukio Mishima, someone who I had an infamous run-in with last year. Thankfully not in real life, because then I would have had to watch him commit seppuku incorrectly and that would have been very awkward for me. But Mishima well-known fascist. I clearly didn't know he was a fascist when I originally read his book, and then I learned it, and I was like, oh my god, what the fuck? Him being a fascist is integral to not just the books he writes, but also the kind of legacy surrounding him, you know? So Mishima's books attract fascists. They also attract PewDiePie. I am not saying anything there, but you know, those are the groups that are being attracted by Yukio Mishima. Fascists. Therefore, their texts become intrinsically linked to fascism. Even after his death, these texts are key to fascists. They are looked upon by fascists as basically a way of demonstrating, hey guys, look how cool and tough fascism was. This guy did a failed coup and then committed seppuku incorrectly and died slowly and painfully. Guys, how based is that? Exact same thing with J.K. Rowling. All of her books, the books are now, for, you know, whether you agree with it or not, are anti-trans pieces of work. People who are anti-trans will take the Harry Potter books and be like, yes, I can analyze this book to be anti-trans, and it is now a symbol of the anti-trans movement. They are inextricably linked. J.K. Rowling is still alive, and that is happening. Yukio Mishima, again, incorrectly committed seppuku and died very painfully. His books are inextricably linked to fascism. Building on this point about the politics within the book, even if the author is not outwardly very political, they aren't someone who tries to commit a coup to install a fascist dictatorship in their country, even though the country was already a capitalist hellhole, so like, what is the difference there? Am I right? Am I right, guys? Anyway, more seriously, you have authors, okay, let me say, you have a liberal author. The way in which they are going to write about the circumstances in their books, the politics of their books, particularly if you are reading about a book that has significant world building, I'm thinking, you know, genre fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, etc. The politics of that author is going to seep into every aspect of the book and the way in which they try and convince you and tell you to think about certain movements within the book. So again, I have not read the Sarah J. Maas books, so I can't really comment on them, but I have heard people say that it's very clear she has a neoliberal, or at least a liberal, which is still a right-wing ideology, lean to her books. I haven't read them, I'm not going to comment on that, that's just a thing that people have said. I have read books like The Hunger Games. Again, I feel like the author of The Hunger Games is a little bit more towards the left wing. However, again, their politics is kind of seen in the books. You can kind of see how the likes of the actions of characters like Gabe are understood, how the actions of characters like Snow and Coin are understood, and you can kind of definitely see, oh, this is the way the author wants you to think. I do feel like The Hunger Games, at the very least, is a little bit more nuanced than that. It does kind of come across as, you know, what Gabe did is incorrect, but you can also kind of see why he did it, but it isn't quite as on the why he did it. You can also see the reason why Coin wanted to do what she did, and also the reason why Katniss did what she did to Coin. There is a little bit more of a back and forth there, but there are other books where that's not really the case. If I'm looking at a more positive way of it for myself, we look at things like Earthsea, where Earthsea, even though it is a monarchical system, wow, I can't believe I said that correctly, even though it is a monarchical system, you see the other aspects of the politics that is very clear from what Ursula K. Le Guin is trying to talk about. Things about equality, feminism, racial equality. Even when it comes to a monarchy, the way that Lebanon goes about his monarchy, actually trying to make things a little bit more fair socially for the people. Perhaps he is less of a monarch and more of a central leadership figure who was simply just selected as the monarch through maybe more monarchical divine ways than I would like, but you know, Ged kind of was like the big dog and was like, yo, this guy's king now, I suppose. You know, even if we're talking about humans' relations with dragons and their societies and the differences in their societies, that is also another way of seeing Ursula K. Le Guin's politics. All the politics of the authors are very important, whether they're going to be more liberal in their interpretation, if they're going to be more centre-left in their interpretation, or they're going to be definitely left-wing in the way they go about it. I don't read right-wing authors, what can I say? You know, especially when it comes to fiction, I'll maybe read non-fiction from them so I can read the book and be like, what the fuck is going on? Why are these people like this? But in fiction, I'm not going to. I'm just not drawn to those kind of books. I don't know one. Let me know down below a right-wing book. Would Cormac McCarthy's books be maybe right-wing? I'd have to think about that, actually. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. So, it's just integral because and also now we're not seeing people reading. We're not seeing people reading very much. So when they do read, it is this like, not to sound pretentious, but kind of slop books. Not slop. They're not pulp, because pulp knows it's pulp, and pulp, it has its point, and I wouldn't, you know, denigrate pulp books like that, because pulp books know they're pulp books. But these other books, they don't think they're pulp, but they're kind of pulp standard of writing. But those are also the books that are the most read, and so then people are like, oh wow, these are the books that everyone wants, and the publishers keep publishing them, and you just keep getting more and more of these kind of books, and those are the only books people are reading because they're way too easy to read, even if they aren't very good. They're just like, you can just get through them. And so it shapes the minds of the people. For example, going back to the Hunger Games shaped a generation, probably my generation, maybe the one I'm kind of like a weird in between millennial and Gen Z. I'm like in between them. But the politics of that probably shaped a lot of people. The equality, the anti-elite, the anti-bourgeois aspects of the Hunger Games, but also not going so far that it's like you're a communist now. When I talk to people who are big fans of the Hunger Games, they're like liberal, maybe some of them are centre-left, but it shapes how people think. And so all of the books that are being published now, their politics shape the way people read, you know, even though I would prefer they read a non-fiction book and have that shape the way they read. But people aren't reading those because, again, reading standards aren't at a point where people are going to be reading non-fiction books en masse. That's not entirely an individual's fault. It is a structural failure of the system. Is it a failure of the system? Perhaps it is actually how the system has been entirely designed to make sure you don't read as much, hence the concentration on STEM, and why all the STEM majors have no ethics, because they're like, what is an ethics? I never read X philosophy book. Oh my god, I'm being sidetracked. But that is exactly why the politics is important, because you are going to be shaped by the politics of the authors that you read, whether you know it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, you are shaped by those politics. I don't know what to tell you. And also, I mean, tangential to politics, I guess we could talk about like the identity aspect of it. Identity politics and intersectionality, people kind of don't understand the difference between the two. They are kind of like identity politics, putting the identity as the only thing that is important to what the analysis is going to be, and then intersectionality is actually looking how the identity does also apply on top of the other aspects and how they intersectionality. But if you aren't going to be reading diversely and different, or if you're only going to be, if you're only going to be reading books by liberal white women from middle America, the only politics you're going to get is the politics of liberal white women from middle America. There is probably a range there. There are more right-wing liberals and more left-wing liberals, but at the end of the day, you are getting that very both sides are bad kind of vibe from them. Whereas if you are willing to read books by people who, Maya Angelou is the first one I can think of, a woman who, bloody hell, experienced the worst of the worst. You read her books, you get that perspective, that difference, that insight you probably didn't get before. Even if we're looking at more modern authors, I've read Han Kang books. I read maybe books by the guy who wrote The Coffee Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I don't know why I used Han Kang as an example. She's Korean. I was meant to make a point about Japanese authors. I don't know. Hiromi Kawakami. I'm thinking of Han Kang because I'm about to read one of her books tomorrow. But you can see the differences in it. You can assume Hiromi Kawakami, Hiromi Kawakami is a little bit more open with the politics. Hiromi Kawakami's politics in Japan and her experience is going to shape your ideology and thoughts about Japan as a country more so than, or differently than Before the Coffee Gets Cold, where the author is, a Japanese guy, and then there's that difference. I mean, more extremely, Haruki Murakami. Oh my god, we hate him. The way Murakami perceives Japan and people is going to shape your way of thinking about Japan and its people very differently to Hiromi Kawakami and the way she thinks and speaks about men in Japan. And your ideas of them will be very different. The books you read shape you, and the books you read are shaped by the authors. Yes, they're probably shaped by the editorial and the publishing team as well, but at the end of the day, the core is the author. The author shapes the book shapes you, you shape the world, we are all getting shaped. What is your favourite shape? Mine's a tetrahedron. I don't even know what that is. Tell me what a tetrahedron is in the comments down below. But at the end of the day, the politics of the author is important, and anyone who tells you they're not they're a big dummy. That's quite rude, actually. You're a big dummy if you don't think the politics of the author is important. And if you ignore the politics of the author, you are a big dummy. And I can say that myself because I didn't look into the politics of Mishima last year. And then I made a video all about it. And then I got corrected. And I was like, I'm a big dummy for not looking into his politics and realizing he's a fucking fascist who committed seppuku really incorrectly and died suffering, which is hilarious. So those were the ramblings of a madman telling you all about why the politics of the authors you read is important. I'm not telling you to stop reading your Sarah J. Maas, I actually don't know any other Colleen. Actually, you shouldn't read Colleen Hoover books, they're shit. I've read one and it was horrible. I'm not telling you to stop reading them, but I want you to kind of be more considerate about, I wonder what their politics are like. Why is this person writing this way? At least think about it, and I know there'll be people who are like, I read to switch off. Guess what? You can switch off, but the world's not switching off for you. If I'm playing video games, I'm gonna switch off. Well, my TV go blue. What the hell? Oh my god. I can say I'm going to switch off and play video games, but guess what? The world's not switching off, and also the intentions of all of the creators are there. I love Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII is literally about, ecological collapse. Final Fantasy X is all about, I guess, religio-fascism, which is actually a really big problem that we're facing nowadays. You can switch off, but the world doesn't switch off. Do you know who else doesn't switch off? My members. My members get access to bonus videos, book club, movie club, other videos. Right now, I started it very late, but we're reading My Name is Leon, and I'm going to try and finish that book in about 3 days because I started it very late, and I apologize to my members. But that is a movie club book. Speaking of Earthsea, Tales of Earthsea is this month's movie club watch. So, if you want to get on it, you can get on it. You can join from as little as £1 a month. There are other tiers as well where you get more things. And also, if you want to give a brother a one-off, you can go to my Ko-fi and do a one-off donation there if you like. Yeah, help a brother out. But if not, thank you for reaching this point in the video. I really appreciate it. Remember to like, subscribe, and share the video with a friend or family member. Comment down below. I think I said many things to comment down below and I've forgotten them. I think tetrahedron was one of them. I'm going to assume that is a 12-sided 3D shape. Tetrahedron. Tetragon. Tetrapolygon. Polygon Z! Go! Yeah, thanks for watching, mates. Like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member. And hey, I hope you read a great book today. I don't know what that was. Was that Korg?